Josslyn's identity exposed, the truth hidden in Jax's will and belongings. Twist. The skies over Port Charles were as gray as the mood that cloaked the town. The death of Jax had left a quiet storm in its wake. The powerful, charming Australian businessman, father, ex-lover, friend, and enigma, had died unexpectedly in a plane crash off the coast of Sydney. Though his body had yet to be recovered, the charred wreckage left no hope. Josslyn Jax stood near the front of the church, dressed in somber black, her long blonde hair falling in soft waves past her shoulders. She held her composure, but inside she was unraveling. Her father, the man who had always been her anchor amidst Port Charles's chaos, was gone. Carly Corinthos stood beside her daughter, stoic and poised, but her eyes shimmered with grief. Michael, Sonny, and even Ava had arrived. Whatever grudges Jax had carried, his departure summoned old ghosts and exposed the frailty of time. After the service ended, the guests began filing out quietly. Joss remained unwilling to leave. Her heart clenched with questions she couldn't voice. She still felt like something was missing. Not just Jax, but a piece of herself. Back at Jax's estate, everything had been neatly packed by the housekeeper he kept in Port Charles. He had lived most of the last 2 years in Australia, but his belongings in the States were kept as if he might return any day. Josslyn wandered into his study, her fingers grazing the bookshelves, framed photos, and the giant mahogany desk where he used to work late into the night. The smell of cedar and cologne lingered faintly in the air. Then she saw it, a locked antique chest nestled beneath the window seat. She knelt in front of it. The brass key was still lodged in the lock. With trembling hands, she turned it. The lid creaked open. Inside was a stack of old letters, leather-bound journals, a few faded photographs, and a red folder marked, "Confidential, Australia, 2002. Confused, she opened it. Inside was her birth certificate. But it wasn't the one she'd always seen. Her name was listed as Josslyn Eve Reva Ashford. Mother, Carly Corinthos. Father, Julian Ashford. Josslyn stared at the document, her vision tunneling, the sound of her breath thundering in her ears. Julian Ashford? Who the hell was that? She dropped into the leather chair by the fireplace, papers clutched in her hands. Atop the pile lay Jax's journal, its worn cover cracked and delicate. She opened it slowly. March 3, 2002. She came to me, frantic, nearly broken. Carly had given birth early. I rushed to the hospital in Brisbane only to find a mess of secrecy and confusion. She begged me to claim the child as mine. Said she had made a terrible mistake sleeping with Julian Ashford. A man from her past, someone I'd only heard about in whispers. Dangerous, complicated. She was terrified of what he'd do if he found out the child was his. I agreed. Out of love. Out of protection. I signed the paperwork. I raised Josslyn as mine. But every time I looked into her eyes, I knew the truth would one day come back to haunt us. Josslyn gasped aloud. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes. Everything she had ever known about herself had just shattered. She wasn't really Jax's biological daughter. And this Julian Ashford was her real father. Hours later, Carly walked into the study and froze. Josslyn sat amidst the open chest, papers strewn around her like emotional landmines. You lied to me, Joss whispered. Carly's face paled. Joss. Don't. Josslyn stood up, trembling. Don't lie again. You told me Jax was my real father. That I had nothing to worry about. That there were no secrets. I was protecting you, Carly said softly, stepping closer. You were so little. And Julian, he was dangerous. You mean to tell me my entire identity was a lie because you were scared of some man? Her voice cracked with heartbreak and fury. Carly didn't flinch. Julian Ashford wasn't just any man. He was involved in illegal trafficking, women, weapons, money laundering. He was under investigation in Australia and Europe. He vanished before I could tell him I was pregnant. Was he ever violent with you? No, Carly admitted. But I knew what he was capable of. I didn't want you anywhere near that life. Josslyn covered her mouth. You didn't even give me a choice. I gave you safety, Joss. You gave me a lie. Her words pierced Carly's heart. And now that Dad's dead, the truth gets dropped like an atomic bomb. Is that fair? I never wanted you to find out this way. Then how? Josslyn challenged. When I was 30. On my wedding day? Or never? Later that night, Michael Corinthos found Josslyn sitting by the docks, staring at the water, her father's journal in her lap. He gently sat beside her. I know what it feels like, he said quietly. Joss turned to him, eyebrows raised. I grew up thinking AJ Quartermain was my dad. Then I found out it was Sonny. And then everything else spiraled. Lies, cover-ups, heartbreak. I hated Mom for a while. Do you still hate her? No, he said. But it took a long time to heal. She exhaled shakily. Julian Ashford, ever heard of him? Michael frowned. That name does sound familiar. Wait, there was a report 2 years ago. Some Interpol agent mentioned him while I was helping Ned with a Quartermain investment in Australia. He's got connections in black market finance. Rumors said he disappeared, but some say he resurfaced under a new identity in Europe. So he could still be alive? Possibly. Michael hesitated. Joss, if you go looking for him, you better be sure. Because you may find more than you bargained for. Josslyn couldn't sleep. The name Julian Ashford rang in her ears like a church bell struck at midnight. She took out her laptop and began digging. Everywhere she searched, the man was a ghost. She found a grainy photo from the early 2000s, tall, dark-haired, striking. A resemblance flickered in his jawline. Her jawline. A few entries connected him to a company called Ashtec Global, which was abruptly dissolved in 2005. But then she found something that stopped her heart. A recent Interpol alert, possible sighting of Julian Ashford in Amsterdam under the alias Elias Crane. He was alive. And if he was, she had to know why he left. Why he never came for her. And who she really was. News of Josslyn's discovery quickly reached Sonny. He invited her to his penthouse for a private talk. I know you're angry at your mother, Sonny said, handing her a glass of tea. And I don't blame you. Carly's not perfect. But she did what she thought was best. She robbed me of the truth. Yeah, maybe. But sometimes the truth is more dangerous than the lie. She stared at him. Do you know anything about Julian? Sonny sighed, his expression darkening. Ashford was involved in some serious international business. I dealt with some of his associates years ago. Ruthless, calculated, never left fingerprints. If he's still alive, he's not the kind of man who just wants a family reunion. I need to know who I am, Sonny. And if you find him, and he rejects you, I'll survive. Sonny nodded. Then let me make a call. I still have friends in Amsterdam. 3 days later, Josslyn was packing when she received an untraceable call on her burner phone one Sonny had insisted she carry. A deep voice spoke. Stop looking for him, Josslyn. She froze. Who is this? If you value your life and the lives of those you love, do not chase this ghost. Julian Ashford doesn't want to be found. The line went dead. Josslyn stared out the airplane window as the private jet rose above Port Charles. Carly had begged her not to go. Michael had hugged her goodbye with tears in his eyes. Even Ava had warned her that chasing ghosts only led to sorrow. But Josslyn wasn't the same girl who used to sunbathe at the Quartermain pool or film TikToks with Trina. Her world had shifted. Her roots had been scorched. And now she needed to find the truth, however dark it might be. In her bag, she carried Jax's journal and the mysterious red folder. Somewhere in Europe, her biological father lived under an alias. And she was coming. Rain poured as Josslyn stepped onto the cobbled streets of Amsterdam. The night was thick with fog, and her contact, a man named Victor who had once worked with Sonny, met her outside an old bookstore. I know where Elias Crane lives, Victor said. But you must be careful. He has eyes everywhere. That night, Josslyn sat across from a townhouse overlooking a canal. Lights glowed from the top floor. Inside, a tall man with silver-streaked hair poured himself a drink. He looked older, sharper, but she knew. It was him. Julian Ashford. Her real father. Josslyn approached the townhouse the next morning and rang the bell. The man who answered looked at her like he had seen a ghost. I'm Josslyn, she said, voice trembling. Carly's daughter. Your daughter. Julian Ashford froze. His expression shifted from shock to sorrow to fear. You should not have come here. I had to know who I am. You are not safe here, he said, stepping aside. But come in. We have much to discuss. Inside, Julian revealed that he had once loved Carly. Deeply. But when he found out she was pregnant, he was already knee-deep in criminal dealings. He disappeared to protect them both. I became Elias Crane to escape my past, he explained. But there are enemies who still want me dead. And now you. Josslyn stared at the man who was both stranger and blood. I didn't come to be protected, she said. I came to know you. To know me. Julian looked at her with something close to awe. You're stronger than I ever was. Josslyn held back tears. Then help me understand who I really am. Julian Ashford, the ghost of her past, nodded slowly. This is just the beginning.